guys, it's Lily Pad Polish, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create a perfect and flawless gradient. I know all too well how hard it can be to achieve a really pretty gradient. I've made plenty of mistakes before, and through those trials and errors I've learned some pretty cool tips and tricks that will hopefully help you guys too. And I wanted to mention that this video is the first video of my nail art for beginners series, and I've mentioned it in a few videos before, but I am so excited to finally start this. I've been wanting to do it for quite some time now. So if any of you guys are having trouble with anything nail art related, whether it be struggling how to freehand or struggling how to stamp, which is actually going to be the next video, a part of this series, I would love for you to let me know in the comments down below. So hopefully I can make a informative video to help you guys out and hopefully help you guys achieve the best and cutest nails out there. So yeah, if you want to know how to achieve a flawless gradient, then just keep on watching. So as you should do for any manicure, I'm going to start off with a base coat to protect my nail, and then I'm going to be applying a white polish for my base polish. This part is really important because no matter how pigmented your polish is, with this gradient method, it's really important to have a white base because the polishes will be sheer and you don't want to have to do tons of coats and get a muddy gradient. And I know that this polish application is awful, but I'm running out of my white polish because I use it so often. But it's honestly not super important that your white is super pigmented, because since we're going to be applying polishes over it, it doesn't have to be perfect. However, you shouldn't have any patches of your nail seeping through. It should be mostly white. And to have a smooth surface to work on, I'm going to be applying a fast drying top coat. And honestly, I don't always do this, so this step is kind of optional. But if you have problems with the sponge sticking to your nail, then this would probably be an important step for you to use. And now I'm going to be applying some liquid latex around my nail, and this is kind of optional, but honestly it is such a pain to clean up gradients even with liquid latex. So if you don't have liquid latex, I would at the very least recommend that you use some Scotch tape around your nail. And the way I like to do my liquid latex specifically when I'm doing a gradient is I just make a giant pile of mess in my cuticles, and then I take a dotting tool or a toothpick and kind of push it up so that it's still really close to the polish of my nail, but it's not covering, so I don't have any white patches after I do the gradient. And that's how I seem to have the least amount of cleanup. And the most important tool for doing a gradient is a cosmetic wedge or sponge. I get mine from the dollar store. They're honestly really cheap for a big pack. And so I use one that looks like this, just a triangle. And mine does have a little break or crease on it where it detaches from the other sponges, if that makes sense. I think you would know what I mean if you bought it. But I have heard people saying that that crease or that break in the sponge does make a difference in the gradient, but I personally haven't experienced that. Whenever I use that part of the sponge, it's really no different than when I use a sponge that doesn't have that. So you guys can just try it out and see for yourself. I'm just warning you because I have heard people say that before, but I personally haven't experienced a difference when there's that crease in the sponge. And the life-changing tip that I learned is to dampen my sponge. As you can see, the sponge on the right is a lot larger than the sponge on the left because I actually put it under water, and I don't think that it makes a difference whether you use warm water or cold water. I just use regular temperature water, and it really does make a difference. As you can see, it's a lot more bouncy, it's a lot more squishy, which helps the gradient, and I just find a overall really good blend of the colors. And this also prevents from your sponge sticking onto your nail and leaving behind some little sponge particles. So as you can see here on my thumb, I'm using the dry sponge, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of sticking onto my nail. And then when I take the sponge away, there was particles of the sponge on my nail, and it really ruined the entire gradient. It left really bad texture, and it left the colors looking really splotchy, and it just wasn't cute. So using a damp sponge is super crucial, and also using a top coat over your base coat, as mentioned before, will also prevent this from happening. This might also happen if your sponge just doesn't have enough polish on it, because it doesn't really have anything to add, so it starts to stick onto the polish that is on your nail. So if you see that happening, it might just be because you need to apply some more polish onto the sponge and do a second coat. And now we can start the gradient. So I like to apply my first color, and then the next color is going to be a hot pink. All details for everything that I'm going to be using in this video is in the description box below. But then I go back again and I just try to overlap the polishes. I don't do it too many times because it does soak up polish and it's a little bit wasteful, but I just try to overlap the polishes so that when I apply it on my nail, it blends seamlessly. So then I just place the sponge next to my nail so that I can easily roll it. So I like to roll it initially just so that I have a good visual of what it's going to be, and then I just dab it on my nail. So the reason why I roll first is so that I get the colors positioned correctly, and then I dab it onto my nail to do the actual blending of the polishes. So here you can see me do a second coat. I don't like to do too many coats because it does get a little bit muddy, but once I've done my coats and I feel like it's good enough, I just take some tweezers, and I like to use tweezers because usually I'm doing my other hand too, and it's really annoying to peel it off with my fingernails that are wet, and they're probably going to get messed up because the liquid latex has polish on it and blah blah blah. So I like to use some tweezers to peel off the liquid latex, and usually there's still a little bit of cleanup despite the liquid latex, but that's okay. I always just clean it up with my cleanup brush and some nail polish remover, and this is Twinkle Tea's number 2 cleanup brush. So if your nails are curved like mine, then chances are you weren't able to sponge on enough polish to get to the sides of your nail, and white patches will be there. So I just dip a detail brush into the polish of that area and cover up, no biggie. And now we're just going to do all of that all over again. So here I am applying the next 2 colors, and I know that this is a vertical gradient and typically people do a horizontal gradient, but I promise you it's the same exact process. I just felt like twisting it up a little bit in this video, and I really wanted rainbow nails too, so that's why I'm doing it that way, but horizontally is the same exact process. So again, I'm just going to roll the sponge onto my nail to get a good placement of the colors and make sure that it's nice and centered, and then I'm going to dab it onto my nail. So as I stated before, it's really important when applying your base polish that it's not too sheer and that you don't have any clear patches. And as you can see here, this is why. The polishes didn't cover up well enough, so unfortunately I have a little bit of a bald patch on my nail, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you can see, but there is a little bit of a white line towards my cuticles that my sponge just can't get to. So what I like to do is I like to load up the sponge with some more polish, and I just kind of squeeze the sponge onto my nail, because when you squeeze, more of that polish that was soaked inside is going to come out, so it will cover up any spots towards the cuticles that may not be covering up too easily. And as soon as you finished all of your coats, you're going to take some tweezers again and peel off the liquid latex. And it's important to peel off the liquid latex right away, because if you don't, you'll start to get some peeling of the polish, because the polish starts to dry and it will leave a lot more residue, which means a lot more cleanup, and cleanup is super annoying. So to avoid that, make sure to peel up your liquid latex as soon as you finish. And of course, do a little bit of cleanup with the same cleanup brush that I used previously. And again, on my ring finger, I'm using a green and a blue, and I'm just applying it to the sponge and then rolling it on my nail for the initial color placement and dabbing it on my nail. So with these kind of polishes, sometimes you have to kind of be careful to make sure that they don't get muddy. Usually I find that with polishes that are super similar, like a green and a blue, like on this nail, I usually have to be pretty careful because even though you're trying to build up the opacity of the polishes as well as blend it, you shouldn't do too many coats because then it gets muddy. It starts to blend a little bit too much, and then you end up with only one color and it's not a gradient at all, or if it is, it's super subtle and not too noticeable, which is not what we want when we want a gradient. And then I also like to cap the edges of my nail with the sponge just to ensure that the tip of my nail isn't just white or bare. And then of course using my tweezers to peel off the liquid latex. And there was a little to no cleanup to do on this nail, which is super exciting, just a little bit here and there. And something that I like to do that doesn't really affect the actual gradient on my nail is cut the piece that I used so that I'm left with a nice new piece of sponge. And I actually used one piece of sponge for all 10 of my nails, and I was still left with a little piece of sponge left over for possibly another 2 more manis, which is awesome. So I don't waste sponges at all, and I have a whole bunch left over. So that's a cool tip that doesn't really affect the nail, but you should totally do. And for my pinky fingernail, I'm just using a lighter purple and a darker purple. And for some reason, my pinky fingernail always comes out perfectly. I guess it's because it's a small canvas type of thing, but it always comes out really, really nice. And I can always depend on it when things go completely wrong. My pinky fingernail is always a bomb. And there was very little cleanup, which was awesome too. And once I'm all done, I would typically apply my I&M Out the Door Glossy Quick Dry Top Coat, but today I decided to spice it up a little bit, so I'm using a Sparse Holographic Glitter Top Coat instead. And because this is an actual top coat with some pieces of glitter inside, this is the final and last step. And isn't this just so pretty over the rainbow polishes? I love this polish, and it will be in the description box below along with everything else that I used in this video. And that concludes this video. I really hope you guys found this helpful, and I really hope you guys learned some new tips and tricks that maybe you didn't know before that will help you get a better gradient. And again, as I said in the beginning of the video, if you are having any type of problems or issues with anything nail art related, let me know in the comments down below, and I would love to do a video on it. I have a handful of ideas that I want to add to this beginners nail art series, but I have lots of room to add more, so please let me know in the comments down below. And I really hope you guys enjoyed it and found it helpful, and if you did, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribed. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.